So this is a day where we talk about the biggest stories in entertainment this week. Right now, the big story is Jennifer Lopez. J-Lo has a new documentary about her movie, and that movie is about her life. Today on the podcast, it is time to talk about the J-Lo cinematic universe. The group chat's here. Let's go. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Okay, look, I don't know a celebrity who is as good at being a celebrity as Jennifer Lopez is. I think she's so skilled at it, at getting people to talk about her, because she often tries to play with or challenge our image of her. She did that a few weeks ago, right? Because she put out this new album, and then with that album, she put out this movie musical. That movie was something else. It was kind of wild. Fans went crazy dissecting it on the internet. Jane Fonda was there for some reason. I don't really understand. Now, J-Lo's put out a new documentary that is about the making of the film. We have layers of self-mythology to talk about. The group chat is here. Jackson Weaver is here. Lainey Lui is here. And joining us for the very first time is culture critic Julianne Escobedo Shepherd. Julianne, Jackson, Lainey, welcome to the show. How's it going, everybody?
Hi. So good.
Hey,
hello.
Great.
We have so much J-Lo to talk about that this is like going to be the light and delight of my life. Let's start with the new musical movie, because I think people need to sort of like ground ourselves in that. It's called This Is Me Now, a love story. A lot of critics, a lot of fans were just kind of confused when it came out. Lainey, you were one of those confused people. Now that you've seen it, are you still confused?
Well, first of all, I've seen it 3 times.
Wow.
I've watched the documentary twice.
Okay.
Yeah. I am just as confused. The whole thing is nonsense. But does that matter to me? No. I don't think that's the point. Like who was going into that film being like, oh, I'm going to discover, what the atomic formula for, I don't know,
Tears.
fission is.
Yeah.
Is that a part of the movie? Is that what I'm to learn here?
Well, there is biology involved in the sense of like she has to restart a heart, okay?
Oh, of course.
A mechanical heart.
Yeah. So it's technology and mechanical engineering, Jackson.
I'm sorry.
What an overwhelming thing to just even think about. I have not seen it, let alone 3 times. Lainey, why do you keep returning to it, do you think? Why do you go, you know what? I need to watch this another time.
Listen, my job is I call myself a celebrity researcher.
Yes.
And so when a celebrity, as you say, is so good at self-mythologizing as J-Lo is, and she's giving us this content for me, people who do my job to research,
yes,
to understand this concept of celebrity, I don't know why I would complain, and I don't know why I wouldn't watch it as many times as possible. Like, as far as I'm concerned, the film is like a laboratory, and I'm like got my lab coat on, right? My microscope going, and I am doing the studies.
I mean, there's something to be said about like very few celebrities give us this much to dissect. Very few celebrities actually engage with their own image and their own idea of celebrity. Julianne, you reviewed the album, you watched the new film, you watched the documentary. Yeah. What is the story that J-Lo's trying to tell with all of these releases kind of colliding at the same time, do you think?
That's a very good question, and I'm with Lainey, and that I'm not totally sure. So I think that she's trying to tell us that she has been on this intense journey to love herself, but actually what it is really telling us is how much she is in love with Ben Affleck, and it just supersedes everything.
Yes.
And it's it's very confusing.
But is there, when you look at this moment in J-Lo and you see the investment, and we will talk about the literal investment in a moment, I mean, the investment that she has in sort of framing herself, where do you see, like J-Lo fitting in this moment in her career, trying to tell this specific story, do you think, Julianne?
I mean, she's very much in the lineage of what Beyonce did, for HBO 10 years ago, or
yes,
however long ago that was. I think that she's still trying to prove that she is worth the pop stardom that she has in a weird way. But also, I think she's really trying to, just the mythology is a great word for it.
Yeah.
She is literally trying to mythologize herself, including with a Taino legend in the movie that she follows very loosely and confusingly. And in the
the roses.
Yeah.
Jackson, okay, let's talk about the documentary for a moment, because in the documentary you learn that J-Lo couldn't find anyone to fund the project, right? To fund the movie that she wanted to make. So J-Lo's like, I've got this idea. It's going to be a movie that goes along with my album. Can anyone give me some money for this? And she got crickets. She got nobody willing to fund this thing. So what does she do? Well, right? Well, but here's the thing that she does. She spends millions of dollars of her own money to make this thing. Is that a common approach to approaching this?
I mean, absolutely not. They even say in the movie, like, no, you don't. This is the cardinal sin in Hollywood. But so it's not at all normal to fund your own movie.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit more normal for musicians to have a very firm hand and grasp on how their story gets told.
Sure.
Or more normally, their estates. Like, we saw the Bob Marley movie that had like almost every single one of Bob Marley's family had a hand in how that story was going to get told.
Yeah, they have producer credits. They have all those kinds of things.
All of them. And then like earlier, we had the Marley documentary. At the same time, there was going to be another Marley movie at that same time with Bob Marley's wife, Rita, as the executive producer. The Marley family said, no, you're not allowed to do it. And the way they stopped them is the way that all musical estate and families are able to craft the sort of style of movie that's made about them by not allowing you to use any of their copyrighted music. So all I'd say is that, like, it's not super normal for that to happen, but for her to really craft literally what her story is going to be, that like never happens. It might have been interesting if like Taylor Swift or someone did it, somebody that you want to learn more about, but not this.
Okay, so I with that said, I want to play a clip that's been getting a lot of online traction since this documentary dropped this week. Here's J-Lo getting a little candid about what this project means to her versus what it might actually mean to everyone else.
I didn't even have to make the record. It's not like anybody was clamoring for the next J-Lo record. You know what I mean? And I know that there's some people around me who are like, this is stupid. Why is she doing this? She doesn't need to do this. And they're right. I don't need to do any of it. I don't. But I want to.
What I liked about that is that as we started playing the clip, you guys started laughing. Like, you couldn't make it through the clip. But Lainey, like, that's a sensitive moment, actually. That's a really sensitive moment of J-Lo kind of being like, I know, I get it. Nobody else wants to make this thing. You guys think I'm a little bit nuts, but it means a lot for me to do this. What do you make of that moment?
I found the documentary incredibly appealing. I already went into it as a J-Lo fan.
Right.
So I know that I am predisposed to be in support of her.
Sure.
But what I appreciated was, even though she's J-Lo and the skin is always glowing and the body is always bodying.
Yes.
She showed us that there are things about J-Lo that aren't always winning. We just talked about her having to finance this project because, yes, nobody wanted to like invest in it. And I don't blame them. I get that. Like, as much of, I don't know if I would have like, given her $100 to like in her GoFundMe.
You wouldn't kick into the Kickstarter.
No.
Got it. All right.
I get that.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate that she not only admitted to sinking $20 million of her own money into this, but she showed us a clip of all the celebrities who rejected her. So like, we're talking Jennifer Coolidge and Jason Momoa and Lizzo and Ariana Grande and even Taylor Swift. So to me, this is kind of the opposite of Taylor Swift's signature squatting. Where all we've ever seen from Taylor is how much people want to be friends with her and who gets to be invited into the special suite at the football game. By contrast, J-Lo's like, so look how unpopular I am and no one wants to chat with me. And no one will take my calls. I have to beg Jane Fonda on the phone to be in my movie. And she said yes to me. And frankly, I appreciate that because J-Lo has always seen herself as an underdog. And it's hard to believe her now 35 years into her career. How could you be an underdog? But she came from the Bronx. She was a woman with curves, a Latina woman in a business at the time that was largely white and largely blonde for women. And she did feel like an underdog, and she still carries that chip on her shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, she's like, I'm still kind of an underdog among all these people on a level Hollywood celebrity playing field.
Yeah.
I still can't get these people to pick up the phone and say yes to me. I appreciate that. I appreciate that candor, and I believe it because she showed us.
But but I hear that. I mean, okay, so I want to go to you on this, Julianne, in a moment. But also, like what I hear about that is like the dissonance between, you know, the idea that these people won't pick up the phone, and also, hey, you're Jennifer Lopez. Like, we've played this tape to the end. We know you won, right? Like, we know you won because we know that you did the halftime show at the Super Bowl, and you sold millions and millions of records. Like, there's something to be said about the fact that, like, you've kind of already proven yourself, and there's this question of what else is there left for you to prove. And to me, I guess, like, when I see artist documentaries, I get a little bit frustrated by this trend that we're seeing lately, which is artists making their own documentaries because they get to sort of inject their own mythology into it. And sometimes I'm kind of looking at the premise of this thing and be like, I don't buy the very premise. I don't buy the very premise that you're still an underdog this many years into your career. But because we don't have the journalists making these documentaries, we have these actual artists themselves producing them. They get to inject these mythologies, and that we have to deal with the consequences of that. So, like, do you buy the story that the J-Lo's telling there, Julianne?
Yeah, it's tough because, I mean, this underdog, which I agree, she is sort of an underdog when you put her on the level with Beyonce and Taylor Swift.
Sure.
And she had an underdog come up. But, you know, she still had millions of dollars to put into her own, like, vanity project.
$20 million.
So,
It's real underdog crises there. Yes, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. But I will say, I did find her documentary a little bit more believable than a lot of other documentaries from pop stars of her caliber, because it really did. I mean, she showed everyone in her life begging her not to do this. Jane Fonda is like, everyone's sick of you and Ben. Do not do this. Her business partner is like, you are absurd for making this movie. And like, everyone is like, no, no, no. And she's like, still has something to prove. She's bawling, you know. I mean, everyone bawls in their own documentary.
Sure, of course.
But I do think that, you know, what we're looking at is products, right? Like these documentaries and you know, self-made movies are meant to move the product, and what they're giving us is the product, not necessarily the person behind the product. And you know, I think that because journalists tend to ask questions that are uncomfortable or that pop stars don't want to answer, they have found a way to control their own narratives. And I don't think they're going to stop.
I found that very generous of you. Jackson, let me say, let me put it to you. How do you feel about these documentaries when they do come out and we see they have the artists themselves as executive producer and also star and there for nearly every frame, and you go, I think you might have also written this. I
mean, I think this is like was said, this is surprisingly really insightful. I don't think you usually get that. And I think it's going to be like the next big trend are these music biopics, because like, as I was saying before, if you make a movie about Kennedy or whatever, no one can stop you from using the newsreels of him. But if you're making a documentary about a musician, if you want to tell the story of Bob Marley or anyone like that, you can't have them go on stage and not sing their song. And if the estate has the rights to that song, they can keep you from using it. And we're going to see more and more of that. And people really want to protect that legacy so they can sell more of the music, build more of the legends, feel more grandiose. So it's not super enjoyable or heartening to see, but oh my gosh, I think we're going to see a million more of it. Michael Jackson next year. We'll see how deep that one gets.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because on Monday's show of this very show of Commotion, we are talking about this trend. We're talking about how biopics have kind of become, on Tuesday's show, sorry, my apologies. On Tuesday's show, we're talking about how biopics have kind of become a replacement for history, and what happens when you begin to lose actual history and start replacing it by all this self-mythologizing, and we're using that upcoming Michael Jackson movie as sort of like the way to get into that story. I should say, if folks are just joining us, my name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and you're listening to Commotion. We've got culture critics Jackson Weaver and Lainey Lui and Julianne Escobedo Shepherd here with me, and I want to switch gears now, and I want to talk about a clip that went viral this week. It's this exchange between Timothée Chalamet and an interviewer during the press run for Dune Part 2.
I would find it so hard to, like, you've obviously got a relationship with somebody who is also your friend. It's not even like you don't know them. They're actually your friend. Is it easier or harder to, like, have a relationship on screen with somebody who you're actually pals with? Would you rather somebody you didn't know?
There's no good answer to that. I feel that it's what the story required. And maybe in some ways, because we are good friends, maybe it was less weird.
Yeah.
Yikes. So the person interviewing Timothée Chalamet there, his name is Sam Thompson. Sam is a UK reality TV star turned radio host and podcaster. Look, that clip reignited this debate about the role of influencers in entertainment journalism. Lainey, for anyone listening who maybe didn't see anything wrong with asking a star, hey, what's it like kissing your friend on screen? Can you explain why that clip upset so many people?
I actually don't know why it upset that many people.
All right. Go on.
It's kind of a standard question that has been asked of actors in films. What was it like filming that love scene? Was it uncomfortable? It is in the same DNA. So I'm surprised at what the outrage is.
It's been quite a big reaction to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess my assumption is because a lot of these social media users who whip up the outrage are novices and only remember things in entertainment that happened 5 minutes ago, and don't have a long foundation, a solid foundation of pop culture studies. Because again, like, it's not the first time this question has been asked.
Sure.
It gets, is it a boring question? Sure. But does boring merit this kind of outrage? Is it a derivative question? Sure. Does derivative merit this kind of outrage? I don't know. So I think there's a lot more going on here.
Well, let's talk about that, because it's at its face, it's the majority of the problem here that it is a boring question, right? Is that, like, in a moment, Jackson, where you see so many entertainment journalists being laid off and losing their jobs, and you go, look, these junkets are difficult to do to begin with, right? Like, because the idea is, like, you're in there with the stars for maybe 5 minutes and you get a chance to ask them like 3 questions and then you move on. Entertainment journalists who are really good at what they do would have relished the opportunity to ask Timothée Chalamet and Austin Butler some questions about Dune. But then you get influencers, and they are likely to do the thing that you just mentioned, Lainey, which is, like, maybe ask a boring or derivative question when maybe there were much more interesting questions to ask them. So when you see this moment there, Jackson, there's a reason that influencers like Sam Thompson are getting access to these press junkets. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why are influencers getting, more space in these junkets?
I mean, so when you go to the junket, like you said, you have a very short amount of time, but also almost all of the time, you're told you can't ask personal questions. Like, if you go into that junket, they'll say, have to stick to the movie, can't ask them about their personal lives. Yeah. And also, if they're an actor, not a writer, you can't, like, ask Timothée Chalamet, like, why did Paul go into the desert? It's like, because it was written on the script. So there's not a ton really there to ask them. So it's a real skill to craft a question that gets an interesting response and actually minds them, gives them the ability to answer something. And if you're not an entertainment journalist or, like, just, a freelancer who's crafted that skill, it's not as easy just walking in and just thinking of, like, off the top of your head what you're going to ask. And a lot of production houses know that. And if you give an influencer who's just going to softball things in, you're not going to have as upset, like we were talking with the J-Lo documentary, you're not going to have probative, insightful, deep, challenging questions. So it can be a little bit easier. And also, like, if you get us, like, I'm not allowed to take gifts. I'm not allowed to, be swayed in certain ways. If you are an influencer, theoretically, there's nothing really to stop you from, working with them during the strike or taking a gift basket and then giving a good review. There's nothing ethically barring you from doing that. So it can be a little bit more appetizing to get an influencer there other than a journalist.
Jackson, I'll give you a gift basket, but buddy, don't worry.
Thank you.
It's in the mail immediately after this. Julian, it really has been this really tough year for entertainment journalists, right? Like so many outlets are laying off people, restructuring, including Pitchfork, where you're a contributing writer. If you had to forecast, what the relationship might be between influencers and journalists, what it might look like in, I don't know, 5 years or so, what would you say where we're going to go there?
I mean, maybe all the journalists will become influencers if it keeps going this way. But, I think that it will take, one lawsuit against an influencer to sort of shift the way that influencers approach these interviews. And I think we'll see influencers applying journalistic standards to some of the better ones.
Because right now they don't. Right now they don't have to. Right? Like right now
they don't have to.
Yeah.
No, they don't have to. But I don't necessarily think it's totally adversarial between journalists and influencers.
Yeah.
They're not doing what we are doing, and that is fine. I think it's more about who the corporations that allow influencers more access than journalists, and that's the problem.
It's not. Go ahead, Lainey.
I will say though, two things. It's not just influencers. Like the other thing that went viral and people complained about was an actual BBC reporter with 20 years experience in entertainment asking Andrew Scott on the red carpet about Barry Keoghan's prosthetic or not prosthetic in Saltburn.
Yeah.
And the internet popped off about that too. So that person was not an influencer. It was just a bad question.
Sure.
And I wonder whether or not that question was motivated by the pressure to go viral, right? Everybody going into these interviewers, I'm sure both of you, Julianne and Jackson, have felt like in our profession where we're like, oh, let's create a moment where we can post it on TikTok and then everybody will see it.
Sure.
Or and so I think that, those kind of questions are not the exclusive domain of influence.
Yeah,
but
I would agree.
You'd see Tom Cruise on the red carpet. He's been accosted by some terrible red carpet questions. Robert Downey Jr. famously walked out of that Channel 4, I think, interview.
Sure.
There's definitely bad questions, bad journalism. You're just not necessarily beholden to a lot of questions when you don't have that ethical standard, and you can get fired if you don't say it. But like, as you were saying, this is not adversarial. This is like about having equal amounts of people in that room.
Can I go back to your point though, Elamin?
Yeah, okay, please do. I forget my question.
Julianne's
You go.
point.
Yeah, go back.
Julianne's point about how
point.
this is affecting entertainment journalism.
Yeah.
I think that there is lots of opportunity for influencers to learn and to get better. I'm an example of that. I started as a blogger. I had no business being in television, and then I got to be doing what I am now. And the difference is because I was brought into a television network and I was trained by professionals.
Right.
So here's what the danger will be. If you keep firing or laying off people with experience, who is going to be around to train the influencer?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, but let's okay, we got maybe like a couple minutes left here. I want to talk, Lainey, about this distinction, because if I'm running a studio and I have a new movie coming out and I want to do a Q&A with the actors in front of a live audience to get them excited about this movie, I can call an entertainment journalist. I can say, Jackson, come interview this person. Or I can call somebody who will bring in with them, 70 people to the screening. And like you kind of go, Jackson, sorry, buddy, I'm dropping you. You get a gift basket later. But really what I'm going to do is like choose influencer because they bring in that audience. And suddenly you have Jackson's skill set replaced by someone who just has an audience and that's why they're there. That to me is the danger here. Right? That's the danger when you begin to prioritize what influencers do over what entertainment journalists do.
Well, and I think that, yes, I think that increasingly what we do, entertainment journalists, is undervalued.
Yes.
And I would love for the industry to really wake up, especially after incidents of, gay son or thought daughter at the People's Choice Awards, which was asked of America Ferrera.
But that's an influencer asking that question, right?
That was a TikToker asking that question.
Yeah.
However, I also think that we have a responsibility to play in that too. As media, people are still working in media. How are we chasing the white whale of virality? Are we the ones like not valuing ourselves, it's got to start there.
I think that is a perfect place to leave it. I appreciate you guys being on the show. Thank you so much for this lively discussion. You guys are the best. And I would, you know what, if I had a movie, I'd come to you guys and I would say, put them on the air. Those are the people who deserve to be there. Thank you for your time, everybody. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Jackson Weaver is a senior writer for CBC Entertainment News. Lainey Lui is an eTalk senior correspondent and founder of LaineyGossip.com. And Julianne Escobedo Shepherd is a freelance writer and contributor at Pitchfork. This show is called Commotion. That is it for the podcast. Listen, we're going to be here next week. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. I'll see you next week.